Ukraine is intensifying strikes on Russian military targets inside Russia, with no sign of slowing the tempo. A series of explosions rocked the Russian city of Oryol. Local residents reported a drone attack and visible fire, Astra Telegram channel wrote. Another Russian Telegram channel shot claimed at least 15 explosions could be heard in the city. Reports also mention a fire and plumes of smoke rising in one part of the city. Oryol Oblast Governor Andrei Klitschkov confirmed that the area came under drone attack. He said that 2 buildings were damaged as a result of repelling enemy attacks. At this moment, 1 person was reported injured and is receiving medical care, he added. We still don't have precise information about the target's hit, but given the number of explosions and the scale of the attack, it seems that high-value targets were struck. As in previous cases, more details are expected soon. This operation in occupied Tokmak stands out as highly unusual compared to the regular strikes carried out by Ukrainian forces. Reports indicate that a Ukrainian attack targeted Russian taxi drivers who were transporting soldiers returning from leave in Rostov. The strike was said to take place in a parking lot near a checkpoint at the entrance to the city, where vehicles regularly gathered to shuttle troops back to their units. Initial information suggests there were numerous casualties, with both killed and wounded reported among the soldiers and their drivers. According to local accounts, these so-called military taxi services had become a routine method for moving personnel between Rostov and the front lines. By striking them in transit, Ukrainian forces not only caused immediate losses, but also exposed a weak point in Russian logistics, where even leave rotations and troop movements rely on civilian drivers pressed into service. Witnesses described multiple explosions and significant damage in the area, further pointing to the scale of the strike. In a bizarre and tragic twist, another incident unfolded almost simultaneously just a short distance away. A Russian MTLB armored vehicle accidentally ran over a separate taxi carrying soldiers from the 55th Regiment. The crash left the driver and 2 passengers dead on the spot, compounding the chaos already caused by the Ukrainian strike. Together, these events highlight the precarious conditions in occupied Tokmak and the mounting difficulties faced by Russian forces in maintaining safe and reliable troop transport. What was meant to be a simple return from leave turned into a scene of heavy losses, confusion, and deadly mishaps, all underscoring the dangerous vulnerabilities of Moscow's war machine. But the more usual Ukrainian strikes on refineries are crippling the Russian economy and its war machine. The Russian maritime export terminal Ust-Luga in the Leningrad region is expected to operate at about half of its usual capacity in September. Reuters reported on this, citing its sources. It is stated that oil export volumes next month would be around 350,000 barrels per day, approximately half of its capacity. The decrease is related to damage to pipeline infrastructure caused by recent attacks from Ukrainian drones. This situation could complicate Russian oil exports and lead to supply disruptions. Problems at Ust-Luga began after strikes on the Uneka oil pumping station in the Bryansk region earlier this month. This station is a key transit hub for oil flowing to Ust-Luga, which is a major logistical hub for Russia in the Baltic Sea, actively used for exporting energy resources. The drone strikes also affected pumping of the Druzhba pipeline, which supplies oil to Belarus, Slovakia, and Hungary. The reduction in capacity at Ust-Luga will lead to the rerouting of oil volumes to other Russian ports, Primorsk and Novorossiysk. Recently, strike drones attacked one of the largest gas processing plants in Europe, Russia's Gazprom Ust-Luga. The great Russian culture in all its glory. 3 words, 2 swear words.
Короче, пиздец. Это, блядь, пиздец. Смотри, что Снежан делает. Ты глянь. Это ебанись нахуй, а. Смотри, что. Все красное. ПВОшки хуярят, блядь. ПВОшки. Это где КНПЗ, блядь. Сука, это где КНПЗ, блядь. Снежан, прикинь, ПВОшки хуярят. Ёбана в рот, блядь. И все, сука, спят, всем похуй, блядь.
Russian public records indicate that by August 2025, the country's military losses in the war against Ukraine have reached about 219,000 dead, according to an investigation by Meduza and Mediazona. The media outlets analyzed Russia's inheritance case registry as well as name lists of the dead compiled by media and volunteers. The study found that Russian combat deaths had grown sharply each year. Journalists estimated that about 50,000 servicemen were killed in 2023 and roughly 93,000 in 2024. The deadliest month was November 2024, when up to 3,000 soldiers were killed each week. One possible explanation is that since the second half of 2024, Russian courts have begun receiving a large number of lawsuits to declare servicemen missing or dead, Mediazona reported. A separate name list maintained by the BBC Russian service, Mediazona, and volunteers includes 125,681 confirmed deaths as of the end of August 2025. The outlets note the tally is incomplete, as many deaths are not reported publicly. The Kremlin does not release official figures on killed or wounded soldiers in Ukraine. Western media, citing intelligence, have estimated total Russian losses in the war at several hundred thousand, including both killed and wounded. Ukraine's general staff said on August 29th that Russia had lost 80,480 soldiers killed and wounded since the start of the invasion. Also, 850 were eliminated in the previous 24 hours. Russian commanders continue to send assault units into battle, often suffering heavy casualties. Recently, Ukrainian forces destroyed a group of Russian troops near the village of Temirivka in the Zaporizhia region. Ukraine has received its first batch of NATO-grade FCK electronic warfare systems. Developed by First Contact in partnership with Germany's GSMK and backed by Berlin. Mounted on Kozak armored vehicles, these mobile units are designed to jam Russian drone signals and disrupt control, video, and telemetry links. 30 units have already been deployed after successful trials. The backlog is gone. The situation is critical. Roscosmos enterprise that developed all the USSR rockets has announced financial collapse. RSC Energia, the parent company of Roscosmos, founded by Sergei Korolev and having developed all the key Soviet launch vehicles, including Vostok and the still-flying Soyuz, is on the verge of collapse and may be closed. This was announced by CEO Igor Maltsev in a mailing to employees on the occasion of the company's 79th anniversary, as reported by Gazeta.ru. The situation is critical. Multi-million-dollar debts, interest on loans are eating up the budget, many processes are ineffective, a significant part of the team has lost motivation and a sense of shared responsibility, Maltsev's statement reads. The groundwork laid by Sergei Pavlovich and developed by our general designers, Mishin, Glushko, Semenov, has been exhausted by now, Maltsev states. He also writes that all major projects have missed deadlines and calls on colleagues to stop lying to themselves and others about the true state of affairs and to start fighting for the enterprise. Maltsev does not rule out closing the corporation due to the inability to function normally and pay salaries and calls on everyone to discipline and coordinated actions. He admits that pulling the company out is a task beyond the realm of miracles. Founded in 1946 and creating the first artificial Earth satellite, as well as Soviet stations that reached the Moon, Venus, and Mars, RSC Energia has accumulated 10.5 billion rubles in net losses over the past 10 years. The company's total debt as of June 30th, 2025, reached 168.4 billion rubles and has grown by 17%, or 25 billion rubles, since the beginning of the year. The crisis in the Russian space industry worsened after the war began, when Roscosmos fell under sanctions and lost almost all foreign customers. By the end of 2024, it had carried out only 17 space launches, which was the minimum for Russia since the early 1960s, the era of Yuri Gagarin, when the USSR was the first to send a man into space. Russia is more than 8 times behind the US, which has launched 145 spacecraft into orbit, and 4 times behind China, 68 launches, according to data from the Payload Space Portal. A quarter of a century ago, Russia held a leading position in orbital launches. Roscosmos carried out more than 30 launches per year versus 28 for the US. 12 for Europe, and 5 for China, according to data for 2000. But since then, the US has increased the number of launches by 5.2 times, and China by almost 14 times. As a result, Russia has fallen to third place among space powers and is barely ahead of New Zealand, which carried out 13 launches last year.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.